The story begins with a little girl traveling in a carriage. She has just been abandoned, and now she is wondering where the carriage is going. She is distracted from her thoughts by the voice of a servant announcing that they have arrived at their destination. A voice outside the carriage began to urge the girl to hurry up as someone was waiting for her. The voice belonged to the butler of the Velvet Palace, whose name was Antaeus. He asked for the door to be opened. The girl opened the door. Behind it stood a handsome young man. He held out his hand to the newcomer and asked her to be careful. No one had ever treated her with such courtesy and care before. When the princess arrived at the palace accompanied by her maid, the guests whispered among themselves. They discussed the news that she was being sent to the western regions. Everyone agreed that she had simply been banished. The princess's mother was lying on the sofa. She was doing her nails and paid no attention to her daughter's arrival. The woman delayed the conversation and finally simply advised her not to upset her uncle, who was taking Tara away. The girl walked through the garden exhausted. She thought about her uncle and the reason why she was being taken away. Tara was also worried about how she would be treated and what to do if she was subjected to violence. Lost in thought, she did not notice how she had reached the huge doors, where she was met by the butler. He emphasized that the master was already waiting for her. The man also emphasized that the Lord did not like to wait. The master was sitting at a table covered with many documents and papers of various kinds. He did not pay any attention to the guest and continued to go about his business until she spoke. After that, the man looked closely at the girl and asked if she was really the woman's daughter. Something about this girl intrigued him, but he couldn't figure out what it was. The servant waited nearby for orders. After examining her, the master noted that she didn't look like the woman at all. The butler thought that this was a huge relief. The girl felt that she was again being looked at with hatred and malice in their eyes. The Lord ordered the girl to be taken away, as she was in a bad state. Tara thought that now she would be chased away and thrown out again. She did not want to find herself in that situation again, so she had to act. Tara tried to ask if she was really related to the man. He categorically denied any such possibility. The girl then asked who he was to her and what they had in common. He replied that they had nothing in common. He was actually the ruler of the Western lands, whom everyone respectfully called Judas, and they worshipped him as the supreme ruler of the lands and domains. The servant asked his master if he should take the girl away and chase her away, but the Lord asked if she was really the woman's daughter. The servant agreed and confirmed his master's guess. He smiled. The girl, in turn, recalled the bad treatment she had received from others since childhood. The illegitimate child became a real grief for the family. Her peers tried to avoid her company and drove her away. A dark essence told the girl that no one really needed her. There were no people who would dare to love her or simply take her in. This made her fall into inaction time and time again. Tara woke up. She tried to remember recent events and realized that her mother had sent her to the West to live with her uncle. Even her own mother had tried to get rid of her. Everything around her amazed the girl. She had never slept so well or worn such beautiful silk pajamas as the ones she was wearing now. Looking out from her bed, Tara noticed a bouquet left for her on the table in the middle of the room. The butler entered the room and greeted the princess. She replied that she was not really a princess and that a terrible mistake had been made. But the young man assured her that she was a real princess and heir to a noble family. To top it all off, her protector was now Lord Judas of the Western lands. He would serve him and, at the same time, the girl. But if that was really the case, then he had to serve her and observe all the formalities. The girl was delighted. If it was all true, then finally there was someone who could protect and help her. The young man continued to lecture her that she should not refuse the gift of fate and should enjoy it. After breakfast, the servant emphasized that there were many things that the young lady needed to learn. And she should start with the basics. Etiquette. The girl could not even imagine what he meant. The young man added that now she would live under the wing of a great master, so she would have everything she needed. But since no princess had ever lived under this roof, he had no idea what she might need. There was only one solution. The girl would tell him herself what she needed for a normal life. Tara agreed and assured him that she didn't really need much, and she agreed. The princess asked if she would be able to leave her room and walk around the palace. The servant assured her that he would soon give her a tour of the palace and tell her about everything in it and what she could use. The young man was surprised by this question. After all, anyone could go out and walk around the palace and their home. So now he asked himself what kind of conditions this girl had grown up in and what had happened to her. The servant, in the form of a cat, poured tea for his master. He assured him that Princess Tara was soon to be killed. After all, she had been sent here, as many believed, to a land cursed and forgotten by God and man. The attempt on her life would not be long in coming. King Clermont actually had many children and descendants. He lost one of his toys, or someone deliberately damaged it. The ruler incurred the wrath of a powerful wizard who could destroy his domain. The servant expressed his guess that they were trying to provoke them. In that case, the king and the woman would try to change their general mood and make the master lose his temper and control. The master suddenly asked Antaeus when Leonidas's birthday was. The servant could not believe that his ruler was going to send a gift to that strange young man who was not averse to indulging in all possible vices. Leonidas was the ruler of the northern lands, so the servant began to guess that his mentor and ruler wanted to send the ruler of the north a girl, a princess. Antaeus asked if she was not too young for such a thing. Judas said that children nowadays grow up very quickly and become adults, so they would wait until the girl grew up and became a good bride. But certain changes would have to be made to her appearance. Antaeus emphasized that they would not be able to pass this girl off as the queen's daughter. After all, there were certain physical features that completely changed her appearance and made her look nothing like other girls her age. The servant also reported that the princess was of no interest to anyone, so there were no rumors about her being sent away. But it remained to be found out who her real father was, in order to avoid any mistakes. The master said that the girl's father was actually a conservative man, and there could be no question of a child out of wedlock. But now there was no point in even mentioning him. There would be no conflict. But even in that case, the royal lineage of this girl could only raise a smile. After all, she looked more like an ordinary orphan who had been picked up on the street and taken in. Auntie reminded him that this was indeed the case. None of her parents had recognized the girl as their daughter, and caring for her could have damaged the reputation of the ruling dynasty and raised unnecessary questions. The man became angry. The force of his anger awakened magical energy within him, and Antaeus could not believe that the master, being a powerful magician and criminal in Ethiopia, had no idea of his true abilities. Now it was peaceful in the west, but previously the tyranny of a single ruler had flourished here. At that time, the local population lived as if under the yoke of a hellish demon. But the master, who himself knew what suffering was, brought peace. Tara's fate was cruel. She had been abused from the very beginning. Her mother was a cruel and malicious woman who took out her anger and disappointment on her poor little daughter. The master said that the house needed to be repaired, because if the girl stayed there for the winter, she could freeze and fall ill with a very serious disease. Antaeus said that he would take care of it. The master said that sending a girl to such a place was like giving a corpse or a dead person as a gift. The girl's mother was actually a despicable person. The girl in turn understood perfectly well that she was an unwanted child of the queen. The king saw her only once, after which he no longer wanted to see her, as she reminded him of his shame. And although everyone around her understood and knew about the girl's true origins, she suffered more and more injustice and ridicule from people. From childhood, the princess understood that she gained strength through ridicule. Friends began to shun the girl and avoid her in every way possible. The feelings of loneliness and humiliation became increasingly difficult to bear. She was deeply humiliated and depressed by the feeling of abandonment and of being unwanted. She remembered most vividly the time when she and her best friend tried to pick apples in a neighbor's garden. Then a three-headed dog attacked the girl, and she barely escaped. Only the servants rushed to help the girl. The reason for this was that the queen ordered the girl to be pulled out of the trap. The maids were very happy when the girl opened her eyes and woke up. The girl was lying there all wrapped in bandages. The maid asked the princess to be careful and let her know if she felt any pain, because only strangers would help her stay in good shape. In those moments of pain and grief, the girl was still worried whether her friends would become closer to her, even for a moment. Extreme openness and kindness were the best things that could have happened to the girl at that moment. The maid said that the queen had asked the girl to come see her as soon as she felt better. So now the daughter had to visit her mother and tell her everything. This seemed very strange, because nothing like this had ever happened before. Tara stood before her mother. The woman was silent. The girl started the conversation. She asked how her mother was feeling. Suddenly, her mother hit her, and she fell to the floor. She certainly did not expect such treatment. Such behavior was not characteristic of the ruler. The servants already guessed what was going to happen next. The queen ordered the girl to be taken away, as if she were something very disgusting and unpleasant. Tara found herself tied to a tree upside down. A large crowd gathered around, and everyone stared at her intently. A woman nearby emphasized that a thief had been found in the city, and now she was up in a tree. This moment left a deep childhood trauma in the girl's soul. After all, she just wanted to be with her friends, to be part of something big, to belong to a group, to be recognized by others. It bothered her that she couldn't really be like everyone else. Why didn't Tara deserve recognition and just being treated well? She didn't want to be born into a life of misery. She couldn't cry now. Someone might hear her sobbing and she would be alone again. Finally, it seemed that people were starting to treat her normally, so she couldn't miss this moment. She remembered how the girl had been treated in this palace. The butler had prepared dinner for her and promised to let Tara walk around the palace. This had never happened to the girl before. A dark entity descends on the poor girl again, trying to convince her that no one really needs her and that no one is going to care about her or worry about her situation. The master's arrival saves the girl from her thoughts and the dark entity's taunts. He had not been sleeping and decided to take a walk and inspect his property. The man asked if the servant had not warned her about anything before. Judas emphasized that she was forbidden to visit the main building of the palace. She was only allowed to walk where everyone else was allowed, and in the palace itself, there were places where only certain people were allowed and others were forbidden. Tara remembered how the young man had warned her, but she was so lost in her thoughts and emotions that she didn't pay attention to it. Fear of punishment and ridicule crept deeper and deeper into the girl's soul and gripped her tightly. The question of what she should do now would not leave her. The fear of being sent away filled the girl's soul again. So the princess fell to the floor and begged for forgiveness. She promised that it would not happen again. The master assured her that he would not harm her. He was now more interested in why the princess's mother had kept her in such harsh conditions. After all, the girl was not guilty of anything except her origin, for which her mother was also to blame. Tara thought that the man's attitude was different from what it had been before. People usually liked her when she was submissive, obeyed their orders, and complied with their requests. Now there was something new. A strange glow enveloped her body. She couldn't move. Her eyes widened in fear and realization of her helplessness in this situation. Judas ordered her not to behave like that again. He emphasized that the girl should never show her fear to anyone again. She must not stoop so low, because most people do not understand such behavior and may interpret it as weakness. Even children who grew up in shelters or on the streets of the city had more pride than she did. She was of noble birth, a princess, and a descendant of a noble family. Her behavior was more like that of a slave. The master reminded her that she was now under his care, whether she liked it or not. And when Tara humiliated herself in front of others, she humiliated her guardian and rejected his care. The princess realized that she had angered her master when she knelt down and begged him for forgiveness. He ordered her to get up, but the girl could not do so. She said that her leg had gone numb. The man knelt down beside her and touched her legs. The glow had not disappeared. It gave her a strange feeling, something she had never experienced before. But now the feeling overwhelmed her again and would not let her rest. At this point, Judas signaled that their conversation was over, as he no longer wanted to waste time on it. The girl ran down the corridor in fear, but the man reminded her that she was going in the wrong direction. She should go in the opposite direction. At that moment, the master ordered her to follow him. After all, the girl was lost in the palace, and he wanted to show her the right direction. She had been ignored her whole life, and now someone was trying to help her find her way. Finally, they reached her room. The girl did not think about how little time it had taken. Judas asked her not to walk around these places at night anymore, because she could get lost and wander around here all night. The master said that if she needed anything, she could call the butler, but she should not go out into the corridors. The night belonged to him and creatures like him. The girl paid attention to his words. She had heard a lot of gossip about Mr. Ethiopia. They said that he had no heart and was therefore often very harsh and angry with everyone around him. And when he decided that the princess's presence was only getting in his way, he could easily get rid of her. Then she would definitely have problems, and Tara would find herself in a worse position than she was now. After that night, Tara reconsidered her privileges. She realized that she had many things that were not available to her even in the king's palace. There were pleasant things around her that helped her take her mind off things. Tara could sleep until lunchtime, and the view from her room was very nice. A week had passed since her arrival, and life had become more like a fairy tale that she had miraculously stumbled into. Tara thought about how the weather made the western lands seem more like hell. However, she saw that this place was actually very peaceful and quiet. Gossip had turned the local rulers into tyrants. In the Winter Palace, there were always people around the girl, but she felt lonely. Now, however, her feelings were different. The maids treated her with respect and humanity. Antæus was constantly worried that his time in human form was growing shorter. He did not want to take on his usual appearance. No one was supposed to see him in this form except his master. The young man was also surprised that his ward ate so little. She never finished her entire portion. She was now amazed that people could cook so well. Antæus himself was concerned that Tara was eating so well. At such moments, the princess remembered how she used to eat in the palace of her father and the queen. Back then, she was given water and a piece of bread. Good food was a rarity, and she did not try to break this established order. She often felt that the butler was angry and upset with her. She once dared to ask him about it, and he replied that everything was fine. Then she asked about Mr. Judas. The man did not like this question. He replied that the master reads books and conducts research at night. His guest did not like this, but the master was used to it. He often walked around the estate at night. The girl told him that she had met him one night. The young man was frightened. He began to ask her if it had really happened. He was surprised at how calmly she spoke about it. After all, such an encounter could have been dangerous. Auntie was glad that she had survived. The girl could not understand why he was so upset. She did not think that meeting the master in the corridor of his palace at night was such a horror. The young man told her how the queen's ambassador once dared to disobey orders and entered the main building of the estate at night. That visit had almost led to military intervention and conflict. The butler explained that a corpse had returned to the fairy kingdom. Its wings had been torn off, and fairies were very vengeful and evil creatures who never forgave insults, but they did nothing to Judas. Having him as an enemy was very costly. Therefore, entering the main building was madness, and it was not worth trying to repeat this act next time. Fortunately, Judas was in a good mood that evening. Tara asked what was sticking out of her companion's waist. The girl looked closely and said that it looked very much like a tail. And she was right. Auntie missed the moment when the transformation began. The process had begun. The young man grew cat whiskers and ears. He tried to hide them in every way possible, but he was not very successful. The girl saw nothing wrong with this and was simply amazed. She had never seen anything like it before. In less than a minute, the butler's costume was nothing more than a simple, beautiful cat. The young man felt uncomfortable appearing in such a guise in front of a stranger. The cat ran away. The girl thought about what she should do. She couldn't just leave him there. Finally, Tara came to the conclusion that she had to help him cope with his fear in this situation. When the girl went out into the corridor, she saw only a pile of clothes. Antony had disappeared somewhere. He didn't want her to pick him up and take care of him like a pet. The boy was not there. Suddenly, she heard a strange sound. Antony was hiding behind the door and complaining that a stranger had seen him naked. Now, as a decent person, he had to marry her and make sure no one found out. The young man kept saying that the girl was very young, probably not even 10 years old. So he couldn't do such a thing with her, and would have to wait for the right time to marry. Anti sat in his room and grieved that he had not been forced to drink the miraculous potion before the full moon. If he had, he would have avoided the problems and troubles he had gotten himself into. The young man, now in the form of a cat, was talking to his friend. His friend asked him to calm down because he was making a lot of noise. He replied that the secret of his transformation was very important to him. His friend calmed Anti down and reminded him that he was not obliged to marry the girl. Cats, moreover, change their mates every mating season. But the cat continued to cry and complain about his fate. Antaeus begged for a pat by arching his back. He asked his friend how he liked living as a wolf, since wolves choose a mate for life and live with them forever. The cat was ashamed of his behavior. His friend asked Anti to finally pull himself together and stop waving his tail, because his fur was flying all over the room. He replied that he couldn't control it because it was a physiological reaction beyond his control. The butler couldn't keep quiet. He demanded that they prepare a potion of oblivion for him so that he could die. Because of this shame, he would never marry a normal woman. His friend said that everyone would just keep quiet about the incident. His friend said that Lord Leonid had recently sent a pile of gifts for Judah, and there were some beautiful things that could be given to the princess so that she would keep quiet and not tell anyone what had happened. Anti doubted this plan because the girl was not interested in precious materials. She was definitely not going to sell herself for something she could not use. Besides, she was a princess without any rights. The creak of the door interrupted their conversation. The girl asked through a small crack if she could leave the monocle and clothes here, on the doorstep, so as not to distract her two companions in misfortune from their important conversation. Tara put down the clothes and said that the cat need not worry that she would tell anyone about it. The girl had seen something like this before and knew about such phenomena, so she would keep quiet and not reveal the secret to anyone. Antioch's friend said he would accompany Tara to her room, as the palace corridors were very confusing, and it was easy to get lost in the labyrinth and miss dinner and bedtime. The young man talked all the way about how it was the first time he had seen Antiochus so agitated. He had never seen him react like this before, or try to hide what he was turning into. The boy apologized for talking to the princess like that. Tra assured him that it was no big deal and that she was sorry for causing trouble for Antaeus and his friend. The girl promised to keep quiet. Antaeus had to ask the girl for forgiveness and try to make up for his mistake. The princess replied that she hadn't meant anything by it when they talked about it, so there was no need to do that. Instead, the young man asked the princess if she liked living in this castle. After all, the western lands were more like a desert, and a little girl might find it very boring to live there. Tara assured him that everything was fine. The girl said that she now had much more than she had in her mother's palace. No one insulted her here, and the living conditions were much better. The young man assured her that she should visit Judas's palace. The servant also said that the ruler had a real garden with many varieties of flowers and herbs. It was definitely worth visiting. Everything was so well thought out that everything bloomed in displays. But the problem was that no one, not even the Lord's closest associates, had ever been to that garden. All this was told by gardeners who, in the distant past, had tried to keep the secret of their work, but they had failed. The girl assured him that she was definitely not going to do that. After all, to desire the forbidden is a great sin. The man asked who had dared to tell a girl such things from an early age and make her think that way. Finally, the moment came when the young man introduced himself. His name was Edel, and he was a cook and pharmacist at Lord Judas's palace. He also belonged to the wolf clan and could transform into an animal. He asked if she was afraid of him after his confession. She replied that he looked quite friendly and did not pose a threat to her. In fact, she remembered the incident with the guard dog. It was time to say goodbye, and Adele asked what kind of food the young lady preferred. She replied that she liked tender food that was soft and melted in her mouth. The girl thanked him for escorting her to her room. Adele returned to Antaeus. He asked if his friend had managed to make a mess. The latter replied that he would not accept anything and that the matter would resolve itself. However, his behavior indicated that he was nervous. His friend asked the cat why it was still in the room. After all, he should think about returning to his human form. But before that, he should think about how to talk to the girl. Judas appeared behind the young man. He said that Idol was feeling a lot of emotions for the wolf. He replied that wolves were actually very concerned about their companions and became completely devoted to them. They were ready for any sacrifice. The master said that he should not get attached to the girl because she would soon leave for the north anyway. The young man asked if this was mandatory. After all, women and girls live very poorly in the northern lands. The magician replied that it was not up to him to decide such matters. The princess's fate would soon depend solely on her ability to adapt to the situation. Adel asked if it was really necessary to do this. Adele was saddened by the fate that awaited the girl. She was not an ordinary child. Usually, at her age, boys and girls want something and try to get everything they desire. Tara was not like that. Outwardly, she looked normal, but inside she had many wounds and traumas. Judas interrupted him and asked how long it had been since his faithful servant had been to the north, and if he missed his family. At that moment, Edel was granted official leave. The young man was very happy about this, but asked what he should say to the envoy from the fairy kingdom who was demanding his wings back. His master asked him to deliver a final warning. After that day, Edel began to visit his new acquaintance more and more often. She thought that he was only visiting her because he felt sorry for her. But the young man seemed like a true companion and friend. Tara always thanked him for his care and kindness. He told her that he had 6 children. Ida looked no older than 30. He explained that werewolves actually age more slowly. In fact, he was 140 years old. Tara replied that she was 14. He couldn't believe it because the girl looked very young and didn't look her age at all. But his surprise quickly passed. He reminded her that she belonged to the royal family and should be different from ordinary people in any case. So she shouldn't be so surprised or think too much about it. The princess confirmed his guesses. She also told him about legends that spoke of the descendants of the ruling family. They actually live longer and grow much slower than ordinary people. The young man asked the girl if she got enough sleep and rest, because if she ate more and slept well, she would grow up much faster than the time allotted to her. Tara agreed. She was afraid to admit that she often had nightmares and scary dreams. Then they might start to think she was insane and kick her out of the house, punishing her again. Adele said he hoped that the Lord's palace would eventually become a real home for her. Judas could show his dissatisfaction, but he understood King Leonid's attitude toward strangers very well. Leonid was very attached to his family and did not like strangers. The time had come to tell Edel about his vacation. He had to leave the girl alone for a while, but he would be back soon. It was supposed to happen in 10 years, and until then, he would always be by her side. At the moment, the boy was also wondering if his friend had finally come to apologize for his strange behavior. The girl said that no one needed to apologize to her. She understood her friend. Her father, the king, and her mother considered anyone born out of wedlock to be immoral. Finally, someone called out to Idol. He was disappointed that someone had distracted them from their conversation at such a crucial moment. Lately, there had been many unwelcome guests coming to the palace. The Lord had repeatedly warned and asked that this not be done. But no one listened to him. Adel thought that this could soon provoke a conflict with the ruler and his guests and start a new war. The boy reassured the girl, saying that she had no reason to be nervous and worried about it. He asked her to eat even when he was not in the palace and no one was watching her. But his main request was that she not go outside after dark. If she needed anything, she should call Antiochus, and he would help her and do everything she asked, like a loyal servant. An even greater warning was not to go to the west side of the palace where the wing was located. The girl had to beware of that place and avoid going there. After all, something terrible and unpleasant could happen there. At night, Tara was reading a book when cries for help from someone unknown distracted her from her reading. She wondered whether she should go out and look for Antiochus, but the thought that she would disturb him stopped her. Finally, the princess decided to go and see what was happening and who needed help. The voice was still echoing through the corridor. The girl put herself in the place of the sufferer and went to help. The sound led her to the garden. There she met a horned young man. He did not expect to see a human child in such a place at such a time. He was extremely surprised, but he restrained himself so as not to frighten the princess. However, the stranger's intentions were actually evil. He reached out his hand to the girl and tried to activate the spell, But she did not obey him, which stunned the attacker because his magic did not work. The stranger asked who the girl was. Why did a simple spell have no effect on her? Perhaps, the night visitor thought, it was because he had lost his wings. He blamed Judas for this. Tara began to run away. She guessed that the stranger was going to try to do something to her. He stopped her with an authoritative voice. He asked who she was and demanded a quick answer, because he didn't like to wait. He liked the color of her eyes and said that they would make a nice addition to his collection. His clawed hand reached out toward the princess. The girl was afraid. Fear paralyzed her, and she couldn't even move. Suddenly, her fear subsided. The girl pushed the stranger's hand away and ran. She felt strange, as if she had grown wings. Her body became light and supple, and she quickly ran through the garden. And when Tara finally thought she had escaped her attacker, a black dog appeared in front of her. He growled and barked, bringing back memories of the three-headed dog that guarded the apple tree and attacked her as a child. Lord Judas saved her from the beast. He threw the dog far away under a tree and angrily asked the girl why she dared to disobey his orders to stay in her room at night and not go anywhere. The man calmed down and asked if the child was not afraid of death and was deliberately disobeying him. The girl felt ashamed and frightened. She almost cried, but remembered that this would anger Lord Judas. He waved his hand, and the disobedient guest began to rise into the air. He said that he would no longer tolerate her and was taking her away with him. He was tired of rescuing her from all sorts of problems and vicissitudes of life. Antaeus appeared before the Lord in the form of a cat. He asked what had happened and why the Lord was angry. He ordered the girl to be taken to her room and the wounded Kirla, who had been attacked by a fairy, to be taken care of. The servant asked who dared to attack a beast that was almost impossible to wound, not to mention defeat or kill. He also guessed that it was the mad fairy Sarant who had done it. But the ruler said that he had done it himself. After all, he had attacked the girl. It was clear that Antiochus was not very happy with the company of this guest and did not really want to talk to her or interact with her in any way. The girl was confused. Finally, they reached the guest room. It was cool there, and she began to make the bed. Antiochus sat next to her and silently watched her actions. Silence haunted them from the very beginning. Finally, he spoke. He was interested in everything that had happened in the garden. The girl thought about what she could tell the servant. Finally, she gathered her strength and told him everything she knew. The cat listened attentively and thought about his own thoughts. In the end, Antiochus could not believe that Lord Judas had attacked Kirla just to protect the girl. Not once had the ruler tried to defend someone who had gone out at night and disobeyed his orders. The ruler's assistant told her that Kirla was a powerful and rare wolf, a gift to the Lord from his best friends. Judas may have attacked him in order to save Tara and send her north. But Auntie began to realize that the Lord's whims would continue for more than a day. This behavior indicated that Judas was experiencing an internal struggle and conflict of motives. The cat moved on to the moment when Tara heard someone's voice. He said that her actions were reckless and that she had no right to risk herself. She should have called him for help first. Tara said that she had wanted to call him from the very beginning, but did not dare to do so because she did not want to disturb him. Auntie said that Sarant had used his magic to lure her out. Sarant was a relative of the fairy queen, but once he sinned against her, and his wings were taken away. He then left the kingdom and became a sinister criminal. Many said that he had finally gone mad. From that moment on, Sarant lost much of his power, for the power of a fairy lies in its wings. That is why he avoided direct contact with serious opponents. The girl figured it out. She understood why he was so confused. Tara said that now she was beginning to fear him. Antioch assured her that there was no reason for that. The attacker would not even come near Lord Judas's domain. He was frightened by his failure and the unsuccessful attack. Besides, his master could not allow him to simply leave his domain. Sarant could now be resting at the bottom of the strait or deep underground. But the little girl should not think about that before going to sleep. Finally, Antaeus returned to his usual tone and asked why the princess was not angry with him. He apologized for treating her badly when she first arrived at the palace. The boy confessed that when no one was angry with him, he felt insecure and resentful towards himself, as if a hurricane was raging inside him. He felt abandoned and deserved to be punished for his actions. Antiochus believed that the girl was too kind to him. He deserved to be yelled at and chased, trying to beat him up or beat him. But Tara behaved unusually for his understanding. The Lord's assistant asked the guest to scold him and call him bad. She did not want to do this, but Antioch demanded it so much and insisted that she finally gave in and said the words. After that, Antiochus said that no matter what, she was the heir to the royal family and was now under the protection of the great Lord Judas, so she should develop confidence and strength of character. So now the servant demanded that she not treat him with respect, but speak to him as she would to her servant and subject. The girl could not comprehend what was now being demanded of her, but he insisted that she must obey. The girl thanked Antiochus for teaching her in this way. Tara thought that the servant had made a great effort to overcome himself, but the assistant himself could not believe that someone had bullied Tara so much. He bowed before her and asked her to forgive him once again. There was a kind of inner strength in this guest that did not allow anyone to insult or mock her. However, until that moment, it had not been released. Kotick asked if Princess Tara accepted his request and apology. She replied that she completely agreed with him. Instead, she asked if he would ever treat her the way he did when they first met. Suddenly, and unexpectedly for everyone, Lord Judas entered the room. He looked closely at the girl and finally said that she did not resemble her mother at all. He expressed the opinion that at the time he was probably just curious. Moving deeper into the room, he said that life is a kaleidoscope of different situations, some interesting and some not so interesting. Some things may attract the attention of some people and leave others completely indifferent. The master called Antiochus into his office. The latter waited anxiously for his master's orders. The master demanded an explanation of how the fairy had found its way into his domain. The assistant admitted his guilt. The servant said that he suspected the chief guard, whom the fairy had put to sleep. Then he sneaked into the garden and tried to cause harm. The master ordered the servant to be expelled. Antiochus said that he would personally manage the house from then on. The assistant had already regretted several times that he had harmed Iona in this way, but there was no other way out. He was actually to blame for what had happened. But now he dared to ask what had happened to Sarant. At that moment, the two men in the room were most concerned about the possibility of a full-scale war with the South. Queen Tanya had to come up with a way to ask for forgiveness herself. Just in case, the Grand Master himself agreed that if the South offered to bargain, they could offer one pair of fairy wings. He didn't see anything wrong with that, or anything that would get in the way. The Lord ordered that all foreigners illegally staying on his estate be found and their heads sent to the rulers. The assistant noted that in that case, there might be no peace with the monarchs. He replied that he could not just sit and do nothing. Antiochus asked if it was really necessary to see the blood of others and use violence. Judas remained silent. He was not ready to answer. Finally, it was time to begin teaching the young princess. But she said she had not been taught grammar, so that was where they would start. The assistant was not prepared for the fact that the king's child could not read. The assistant was indignant, but informed her that Edel had sent a letter. The girl waited eagerly for Antiochus to read it. There was nothing interesting in it, only instructions on what the princess should eat. The girl did not mention that since meeting Sarant, much had changed in her perception. She had begun to see things she'd not noticed before, or had not seen at all. Even now, Antioch's shadow was cat-like. The princess wanted to ask the assistant about it one day, but for some reason changed her mind. She decided that when it started to make her uncomfortable, she would ask the assistant about it to get to the bottom of it. The Lord summoned his assistant. He emphasized that he had sensed another trace of weak magic in the castle. It definitely did not belong to a fairy, as it was much weaker. It could be a spy or even an assassin. The assistant was unable to follow the magical trail with his abilities, so Judas took control of the situation. He would personally deal with whoever dared to violate his territory and infiltrate the castle. After a long search, the trail led to a princess sitting in a room, peacefully reading a book. The Lord doubted the accuracy of his tracking. Still, he asked if it was a girl who had used magic. She couldn't understand what her master wanted from her. With a wave of his hand, he summoned her to him in the air to take a closer look. At their first meeting, he hadn't felt anything, but now he clearly saw magic in Tara. Now the master demanded an explanation. Suddenly he understood something for himself. So he announced that the girl was actually a mole. The Lord also asked if she knew why her hair was such a strange blue color. He said that the color was very rare. She was not supposed to have magical abilities, contrary to everything that had happened in her life. But something had gone wrong. A drop of unwanted blood had gotten into her, and that was the cause. When the assistant found out what the girl had left behind, he couldn't believe it. He asked the girl when she had started to feel strange. The princess replied that it had happened after she had met the fairy. The Lord began to understand why the attacker had failed to harm the girl and why his magic had no effect on her. But when it came to Tara's mother, everything fell into place. However, he did not expect such a turn of events. The Lord said that she must come to his office that night. When his assistant asked why, he replied that something had come into the world that should not exist in nature. Therefore, he had to investigate it. Antiochus asked if Judas could have known about the girl's power earlier. He assured him that nothing would have changed. The power of a grain of sand had no effect on him, and he would not harm the great magician. Antiochus asked what would happen to the girl. The ruler asked if he had been infected by his friend. But the assistant still wondered if Tara would remain unharmed and if nothing would happen to her. He advised him to treat the girl with care and to restrain his anger. The man did not pay much attention to his young servant's advice. The ruler was surprised at how easily the girl had gained the upper hand. Night fell. The princess fearfully entered her master's room. He was waiting for her and invited her inside. She guessed why she had been summoned. However, she wanted to hear it from the magician himself. Tara said that Antiochus had told her a little about magic, but that knowledge was scattered and not very systematic. The man replied that they would not talk about the body and the mind, but about mana and its reserves. The Lord asked if the girl knew what a mule was. She knew the animal with that name very well. Judas said that the girl's father was actually a great man, but not in his eyes. The girl asked if the ruler had known her father, and why he had kept silent about him all this time and had not introduced them. And even though her father was someone important, she meant absolutely nothing to him. Judas asked her not to hold back, but rather to follow the flow of her thoughts. The girl was overwhelmed by all sorts of feelings. She wanted to cry, but something prevented her from bursting into tears. The Lord couldn't take it anymore. He sternly ordered the girl to sit down in a chair and stop crying. In his opinion, tears ruined a person's face. Now he could tell her something important to clarify the situation. The magician revealed that the girl's father and mother had formed a bond that should not have existed in nature. As a result, Tara was born, and now the Lord of the Western Lands would offer her to study magic. The girl thought about the offer. However, the magician asked if she wanted to learn magical abilities herself in order to be able to punish her mother and the king for their cruel treatment in the future. Judas was certain that the desire for revenge and greed were the driving forces behind human behavior. This girl could not be an exception because of what she had seen in her life. The magician would also find it quite interesting to see how the woman who gave birth to this girl would suffer and die at her hands. Unexpectedly, the girl asked if she would be happy after her revenge. The Lord replied that this was a very interesting question. Even God himself probably did not know the answer. But it was worth trying, and in this case, everything depended on the girl herself, so the choice was ultimately hers. Tara asked why, in that case, he recommended that she take revenge. He replied that it was all for fun and for the girl's sake. After all, everyone wants revenge for the insults they had to endure in that life. The princess asked if it becomes harder for people after that. The Lord replied that revenge serves to give people self-satisfaction and enjoyment from their superiority over someone else, and complete triumph. The sorcerer drew an analogy that when a person is hungry, they can eat a lobster. This would make the person feel better, but how would the lobster feel? This phrase made the girl think seriously. Tara came to the conclusion that death does not always bring satisfaction. Therefore, in such situations, she must choose for herself the path she will take in the future. It was not an easy choice for the young lady. Finally, she told Lord Judas that she was giving up her revenge. After all, once she committed an act of violence, the consequences would be sad and difficult for a decent person's conscience. Tara did not want that. The magician reminded her that she had one cherished desire. She wanted to know more about her father, so by studying magic and mastering certain skills, she would be able to learn a lot about him and his life. Tara fell silent. This began to annoy the man, and he said that if she did not speak, she would constantly suffer from attacks by strangers, and he would personally throw away her book. The girl confessed that she could not read. The Lord promised to teach her to read and write. He himself began to notice that since the girl had come into his life, he had been making more and more foolish and ill-considered attempts to do something unusual. The conversation was over for the day. The man said that starting tomorrow she would learn to read and write from Antiochus. The servant would be informed and would be completely at her disposal in terms of her education. It happened just as the man had said. The girl began to learn to read and write. She studied diligently and memorized everything her teacher told her. Antiochus praised her for her desire to improve. One day, she decided to write a letter to her friend Edel, from whom she had not heard for a long time. She carefully wrote out the letters for which Antiochus praised her once again. Finally, Tara decided to send flowers as well. The question arose of where to gather flowers for a bouquet. He replied that she could ask the Lord, but that was a bad idea from the start. The girl was surprised by the tone her mentor used. The princess asked if only the Lord himself had the right to visit the garden. Antiochus said that Judas would not mind if his guest went in and picked flowers for a bouquet for her friend and companion. Once in the garden, which was very different from what the girl had imagined, she told him that the Lord would teach her magic and promised to help her get a proper education in the future. Antiochus was happy for the girl, who was destined to become a good person. He was even more pleased that she had come under the protection of the Lord of the Western lands. He would do his utmost to raise her to be a normal person. While they were talking, the girl lost sight of her mentor and got lost. She wandered around the garden for a long time until she came to a strange place. It was different from anything else she had ever seen. A strange sound came from somewhere. It sounded like the growl of a huge dog. And so it was. The girl saw a beast in a cage in front of her. It sat and watched the girl intently. Its gaze did not bode well for the stranger. Suddenly, the girl heard someone's voice. The stranger complained about how hard and painful it was to die. His leg hurt very badly and his owner had left him to die, not even paying attention to his suffering. Tara realized that she could hear the dog's thoughts. She felt very sorry for him. After all, she was the reason his leg had been torn off or simply injured. But what struck her most was that he was also afraid of being abandoned. For some reason, this brought her back to her past. Even her parents did not give her the attention she needed. From an early age, she was given to servants to raise. She was taken under the wing of a maid named Delphi, who constantly complained. For Tara, who had been abandoned by everyone in the world, the servants became her universe and the center of her small world. The girl loved her nanny, but even the maid hated her and thought that she had been given this girl as extra work. The girl hated the child. She even sometimes refused to feed her from a bottle because she considered the little one a burden thrown upon her by the world as punishment for past sins. Her gaze never conveyed anything positive. Even the girl's curiosity was stifled from the very beginning. She tried not to leave any traces behind when she explored her surroundings. She was often scolded for touching the furniture and walls in the rooms. One day, Tari felt very ill. It felt as if everything inside her was gathering into some kind of unknown ball. The girl called for help, but no one came to her. Her nanny did not even pay attention to her or her pleas. In search of help, she went into the room where the servants usually rested. The girl overheard a conversation in which it became clear that Delphi simply hated the girl, especially when she cried. And now Tara remembered the Lord. He was the only person who allowed her to cry in his presence. Many considered him evil and cold, but he was completely different and did not suffer. Meanwhile, Antiochus came to his master. He told him about his walk in the garden and that the girl had disappeared. The servant also said that they needed a doctor to help the dog. They would look for Tara. The master ordered Idol to be summoned to the palace. He had to deal with the illness. But the young man was far away in his homeland, so a message had to be sent by carrier pigeon. Judas ordered him to act quickly. The princess was found thanks to everyone's efforts. Now she was lying in her bed, thinking about what Judas and Antiochus were doing to her. The magician tried to heal and help the victim, even though she was to blame for what had happened. After examining her, he said that almost all of the girl's magic had been depleted, but there were no signs that she had used magic. So the real reason was something else that still needed to be established and discovered. The magician thought that something could have happened to a child like Tara. However, the dog had also contributed to this situation. It seemed as if he himself possessed magical abilities. Auntie asked if any medicine from Edel's supplies would help, but Judas assured him that the body would have to cope on its own. The servant said that the dog had been acting strangely and was aggressive towards those around him. Antiochus was instructed to lock the dog up somewhere far away so that Tara could not reach it. None of them had any idea why the girl had become so weak. Over the next few days, the girl ate very little. She couldn't eat anything and suffered greatly because no one could understand her feelings. She complained that she couldn't do anything and didn't want anything. Everything had lost meaning for the girl. She was upset that Antiochus had to look after her instead of going about his own business. He, on the contrary, only wanted to help the girl and ease her suffering. Her only desire was to fall asleep forever so that she would not have to see anything that was happening around her. The servant, who spent a lot of time with her, hoped that long rest and sleep would help her. At night, the girl wanted to go to the bathroom. She still felt unwell, but decided not to take any risks and called Antiochus for help. The princess tried to be careful but knocked over a vase. She felt very sorry to wake the servant, who had been with her all day and was very tired. In the middle of the night, he certainly did not want to wake up to serve his little mistress, who was just a guest. The girl suddenly felt very cold. She thought she should go look for a blanket to warm herself up. She felt uncomfortable. Nevertheless, Tara went to the kitchen and the storerooms in search of something warm. Soon the princess grew tired of wandering and searching. She sat down on the floor and stared at the candle for a long time until Lord Judas arrived. He asked what the girl was doing there alone in the middle of the night. She did not listen to him again. The princess explained that she was looking for a blanket because her bed was wet. He asked if she had done that, but the girl said she had just spilled water on the bed. The Lord did not believe her, but she wanted him to believe her. Tara was tired of talking. She asked him to forgive her and call Antiochus for help. After all, she was lost and did not know how to get back to her room. The Lord replied that the servant was not in the castle at the moment. He picked her up by the waist and carried her away. The girl certainly did not expect this. She tried to distract herself from this and simply asked what had caused her companion to leave the house. The Lord said that he had business to attend to. But Antiochus was to return by tomorrow. And now the Lord of the Western Lands himself would take care of his guest, for she would not be able to find anything in this house on her own. And he did not have time. He magically dried the blanket and bed from the spilled water. He felt strange being next to the girl. A previously unknown feeling overwhelmed him. He didn't think about what could have happened. Suddenly, the girl asked what had happened to the dog. The Lord didn't want to talk about it, but he had no choice. He explained that he had gotten rid of the furry creature. Tara asked if he had killed it. The master asked how she could care about the fate of a dog that had caused her suffering and a long, unknown illness. Tara replied that she didn't want anyone to get hurt. The Lord asked how she would have reacted if the dog had bitten her hand or neck. The girl thought about it. She certainly hadn't expected that turn of events. Judas asked if she still felt sorry for the dog. Tara replied that she was scared, but she was even more worried that she might be abandoned. She would never survive that. The Lord had been kind to her. She didn't want Judas to treat her the way her parents had. The girl asked why he cared so much about her. After all, she was almost a stranger to him and he didn't need her. He replied that he didn't think so. The conversation was over. The Lord turned and left. Finally, he ordered her to come to his office at dawn. Tara couldn't understand the reason for this order, but she didn't dare to ask. The master ordered her to go to bed so she wouldn't be sleepy. In the morning, the girl woke up full of strength and energy. She saw Lord Judas next to her. He had been sitting next to her for a long time. He noted that she had woken up full of strength and energy that day. Tara began to ask what had brought the man to visit her. He replied that she should eat first. He had also ordered food for his ward in advance. The princess was pleasantly surprised. The little girl's appetite was very good this time, but the Lord ordered her to address him only when her bowl was empty. He also ordered her to eat everything down to the last crumb, and only then would they begin. The girl understood from her master's eyes that there was no point in resisting. When she had done as he commanded, he told her that from now on she must obey him and eat as she had done today. It was time to begin the lesson. The girl asked him to wait while she fetched her grammar and writing book. The Lord asked if she was still trying to improve her writing. The girl replied that she was trying hard to learn to write as befits girls from noble families. And there was nothing funny about that. After all, it would be foolish not to take advantage of this opportunity. Tara asked when Edel would return. Without him, she felt lonely and empty in the palace. This was despite the very good attitude towards her on the part of the Lord himself and his subordinates. The girl was infinitely happy about this. The Lord of the Western Lands liked these words very much. He asked if the girl was not afraid of him, because he could destroy her with a single movement of his hand for disobedience and for violating his orders. But Judas stopped himself in time. He believed that such thoughts were empty and that it was not fitting for him to give in to them and think in such a way. He said that Antiochus would return soon and resume his lessons. Tara was immediately delighted. She asked her master when her friend would return. The Lord promised that he would arrive no later than the day after tomorrow. The princess was curious about the reason for his absence, but the Lord remained silent. He only said that Antiochus had left for the southern lands, where he was expected on a voluntary diplomatic mission from the ruler of the western lands. The girl was surprised, because the western lands were the domain of the fairies. Judas asked the girl to be quiet. He ordered her not to bother him with empty talk anymore, but to try to devote all her time to writing and calligraphy. The girl obeyed him. Finally, she managed to finish. The Lord ordered her to come to his office next time and have her lessons there. Tara said she was very tired. Judas asked her not to be lazy, because she would never achieve anything that way. She began to say that she did not know the way to that place. The Lord picked her up and carried her to his study, but his real intention was to show her a room she had never seen before. Everything around her was very beautiful and clearly designed especially for her. The Lord said that Tara could live in this room for a while. After all, it was very troublesome and time-consuming for him to come to her. The princess asked what floor she was on, because the view from the window was magnificent. There were many things around that disturbed her. The Lord assured her that they were in the main building. The girl was delighted with this room, and while she was rejoicing and jumping for joy, Judas looked at her skeptically and thought about how happy she was. And he began to do more and more silly things. Tara spent the whole day admiring the view from the window. She saw many interesting things there. She never tired of observing nature and everything around her. The princess was happy. It was time to sleep, but the girl couldn't fall asleep. She didn't expect to be so excited by what had been happening around her lately. Thoughts slowly revolved around the fact that she had finally been accepted. The girl did not sleep for the rest of the night. She thought about her life. She was ashamed of how she had behaved from the very beginning. She had spent her whole life alone, and now she did not think that she would be accepted so warmly. Throughout her entire conscious life, she had only one true friend. They often talked and loved to sing songs when no one could hear them. Back then, it seemed that the whole world lay before them, waiting for their arrival. The girl's friend was called Shu, and she was a girl. She was very beautiful. The girl's hair resembled that of the princess's mother, but memories of her unknown father haunted the poor girl. And although Tara subconsciously believed that her mother was evil and cruel, she would not have refused to become like her and receive at least a fraction of her love and respect. Shu always sang Tara's favorite songs. Memories of those days brought back a flood of unforgettable emotions about the time they spent together. Shu was always serious. She never hid what she thought. That was why she was punished. Tara's happiness did not last long. Every time she returned home, her evil nanny was waiting for her. She always found a reason to pick on the girl. The nights were cold and long. Tara dropped her pillow on the floor. Unexpectedly, her husband appeared before her, and she asked him what he was doing in her room. The Lord replied that he had heard his guest throwing things around in her room. The princess asked him to forgive her for her unworthy behavior, but the Lord ordered her to pick up the pillow and remember everything he had told her. It seemed as if she had once again let it all go in one ear and out the other. The girl became serious. But he again listed all the girl's transgressions. She herself understood that she had again broken all the rules that had been set for her. He sternly asked why he should let her live after all that. Tara was seriously frightened. She remembered all the rumors that had been circulating about her guardian. But in an instant, she focused and thought that she could seriously anger him. His kindness bordered on the severity of a regional ruler. Judas said that the girl's magical scent was very heavy and not very pleasant. He began to sense his ward's magical aura again. This meant that her powers were returning to her after her rest. The Lord thought that the girl's magic was somewhat similar to that of a small animal that had been cornered and was trying to defend itself. He reassured his guest, saying that all his threats had been just a joke. Suddenly, the Lord kindly advised her to learn magic, otherwise she would not be able to do anything with it. She would become like a wild animal, lashing out and trying to break free. The man called her to follow him and told her not to get distracted. He said that he would show her something that no one had seen in a long time. He was talking about his secret room with magical artifacts. Judas handed the girl an amulet. It was supposed to help Tara cope with the influx of magic. The guest herself thought that the color of the stone in the setting resembled the color of Judas's eyes. But now was not the time for such thoughts. The master sat down in an armchair and told the girl to read the book he had given her. She thought that this would be a new test for her. Tara had already mastered the skills of reading, but for some reason she felt shy in front of this man. The book turned out to be a fairy tale about Little Red Riding Hood. Tara quickly became engrossed in reading. The book was not only interesting, it was full of pictures and illustrations. The girl did not notice how time flew by. The princess enjoyed learning something new. Her perception also changed. The girl did not think that she could learn so much new and useful for herself and her new friends in this way. Suddenly, she saw a strange illustration. It was not quite a wolf, not quite a dog. The girl asked why she had remembered the abandoned dog again, to which the Lord replied that it was not a dog. It was a wolf. Suddenly, the girl was preoccupied with the question of who her grandmother was. The Lord asked Tara what she knew about her family tree and her ancestors. He guessed that she knew absolutely nothing. The princess admitted this and did not intend to hide it. Judas asked if she really had never heard anything about her father before. Tara asked instead why he had been introduced to her as her uncle. But the Lord denied any connection between them that day. He agreed that, in a sense, the girl's mother was actually his sister. He explained that not many families of prominent aristocrats had retained their good standing and abilities over the centuries. The man explained that his father had married Adelaide's mother, the girl's mother. Thus they were related to each other. The girl did not give up hope of understanding everything. The Lord advised her not to ask too many questions about her family. He also recommended that she not go into too much detail about their life together. So it was time to finish reading and finally go to rest. But the master quickly changed his mind. He tried not to bring up the subject of her family anymore. He didn't care what had happened to his guardian's family. After all, in Judas's opinion, the past drags you down and prevents you from acting freely. Meanwhile, while the girl was reading, the master's hand drew various pictures on the paper. He was writing a letter or jotting something down. It was difficult to tell. Soon, the light atmosphere was replaced by complete silence and the rustling of the pen. The girl did not notice when she fell asleep. She did not expect that reading could be so tiring for a little girl. The only thing that distracted her was that the room was cool. The master realized that his ward was cold. He covered her with a blanket and threw some paper on the fire to raise the temperature. He didn't want to wake the girl who was sleeping so sweetly, so he just left. When Tara finally woke up, the first thing she did was look for the man. She heard the pleasant smell of food coming from somewhere. It turned out to be Antiochus, who had come to his master's house. The girl was very happy that her friend had returned. She rushed towards him and tripped on the stairs. Fortunately, the Lord was nearby. He managed to grab Tara and prevent her from falling down the stairs and getting hurt. The three of them sat down at the table. The girl asked her friend how he had coped with his duties. He did not answer for a long time, then said that the reason for all this was the invasion of fairies into the Lord's domain. Antioch told the girl that she had nothing to worry about. Together with Queen Tatiana, they had punished the intruder, and now he was far away in a very difficult situation. The servant said that he had not submitted his report on time because he had been very busy with the queen. She was a very serious girl who would not allow anyone to question her authority, especially a crazy fairy. Judas said that he could speak now. The cat did not understand the reasons for his master's behavior, but he quickly figured out what was going on. He said that the queen had promised to help with everything that had happened. Tatiana offered a one-time compensation for her subjects' violation of the peace of the neighboring country's residents, and he dared to attack the guest of the ruler of the Western land. Judas listened silently and smiled. The queen would try at all costs to keep the matter within her domain to prevent outside interference. She could not allow a blow to her authority to go unpunished. Judas said that in that case he would have to send Saranta south to be tried and punished. The girl did not like these words very much, but she remained silent. Antiochus said that the fairy himself was not concerned about this issue at all. It was worth considering exchanging his wings for something more suitable and valuable. Many said that circumstances would change before the trial. The servant asked the girl to eat well while he and his master settled another important matter. Suddenly, the cat himself realized that his master was also watching the girl closely, or rather, watching how she ate. Soon, Terry felt ill again. The butler watched over her and tried to relieve any symptoms of her illness. He was worried that the girl would feel even worse in the absence of qualified doctors. This time, Mr. Judah was called again. The butler was outraged by such behavior. He certainly did not expect anything like this from his assistant. The girl did not want to let him go far from her. It was difficult for the man to understand the pain and suffering of a girl who was not born with such a perfect body as his. He didn't even want to think that she could suffer because of his negligence. The girl seemed to hear all the reproaches that Judas silently expressed to her. She asked him for forgiveness for what had happened. She didn't want to get sick again and be confined to bed and ill. Tara understood her illness as the reason why everyone despised her and tried to drive her away. She began to fear once again that everyone would turn away from her and her life would become like it was before. Judas was surprised by the behavior of the girl he knew. What a terrible childhood she had had. She didn't know what had caused people to treat her so strangely. Lord asked her to treat him more kindly because he was different from everyone she had ever met before. The very existence of such a person was extraordinary to Tara. His kindness was impressive. Judas's silent support and his attitude toward her meant much more to her than she had ever learned about kindness from strangers and those close to her in the palace of the queen, her mother. The princess was beginning to fall asleep, and many thoughts were running through her head. She couldn't control them all. So Judas found out how she felt about him. Tara considered him her savior. Antiochus brought another servant with him. He was shaped like a winged bird. The stranger said that Antiochus had behaved very badly when he dragged him away, because he would have come voluntarily after a while. The doctor said that when a great magician calls, there are very few options for avoiding it, so he asked to be shown where the sick girl was and what had happened to her. Judas ordered that everything be done carefully. The bird quickly diagnosed the girl and determined that she had stomach problems. She had eaten a lot of food that was too heavy for her body, and now she had to pay for it. Judas accepted his guilt. The doctor said that there was one way to help her, and the girl was old enough to take advantage of it. Tara heard these words and hid under the blanket. She felt very uncomfortable imagining what would happen. The man asked why the girl had never said she was full. If she had, he would not have forced her to eat. The master also asked her when she would give up her habit of always obeying and listening to everyone. In the garden, Seron was talking to someone. The stranger told him about his adventures in the Western lands. Many people were discussing this topic, not just out of curiosity. It was something important. Judas, a hero of his time. He fought a giant dragon named Barbarossa, who burned entire continents with his flames. No one could stand up to this monster, until the Lord joined the fight. Judas defeated the monster in battle and dared to face him only because he didn't like the way he breathed. So Sarant had no reason to complain about his fate. On the contrary, he should have thanked it for saving him. This made things even worse, because he didn't mention that he had actually been forced to flee the Lord's garden by a little girl with blue hair who had come out to meet the enemy, and Saran had done nothing to her. The fairy said that his master must know this girl. She had come to the palace of the Lord of the West from the Middle Lands, and she was living there at his expense. The attacker felt increasingly uncomfortable. It turned out that the boy opposite Saran was a relative of Tara. The fairy asked if he was angry with him for attacking his relative. The young man replied that no one in the kingdom was valued, even the servants were mocked. The most surprising thing about this whole situation was that everyone knew very well that she came from a noble family. If anyone said anything, the boy was ready to reveal his secret desire, to capture Tara. Sarant said that he also wanted to get this girl. He would do everything in his power to get her, although she had not shown any magical abilities when she confronted him in the garden. But what was more surprising than the absence of magic was her ability to resist magical influence. That was why the Fae was so interested in this girl. He couldn't understand the reasons for his failure. The young man asked for more details. Ainz arrived to visit his aunt. She asked what had brought the young man to her estate at such an hour. He would be better off resting and gathering strength for the task ahead. He replied that he had no time for that. The Queen of the Winter Palace loved beautiful things, with which she often surrounded herself. Ainz, Abella, and many others pleased her only because they met her desires, requirements, and standards. But one factor still bothered her. It was the fairy queen named Tatiana. Most of the conflicts and armed clashes were caused by the queen's envy of her hair and beauty. Adelaide hated the fairy queen with a fierce hatred. She was ready to do anything to destroy her and get rid of her. And now there was news about Tara and the awakening of her magical abilities.